Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell. So happy to be here with Marc Gannon, Vice President of Community Impact. Whoa, great title. For Aloha United Way. And this is part of the series called Aloha United We Stand. It's all about Aloha United Way and the heroes within its ambit, okay? And today we're talking about education with impact, because impact and education really have to go together when you're talking about charitable companies. So Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
It's really important that we do this. Just a word about it, the series in general. We talked to Cindy Adams and Jody Schrum about this a few weeks ago, maybe months, a while ago. And it really has traction for me because we need to cover what's going on in the nonprofit area. And a lot happens in Hawaii. Hawaii is a special place for nonprofits. And, I realized that we weren't really covering it, and we need to cover it. Not only for the benefit of Aloha United Way and companies like Aloha United Way, not only for the benefit of the beneficiaries, but for the community in general. We have to know the elements of the community, how this thing around us, how our society works. And I don't think we know enough about it. So hopefully we'll teach that too.
We'll do our best. That's a lot to cover.
So, okay, so tell us, refresh us about Aloha United Way. What is it? How does it function? What would you want people to know about its operations?
What I think is really key about Aloha United Way is that we're a very real local presence. Yes, United Way is an international brand. We're associated with a much larger system, but Aloha United Way in particular is about serving the community of Honolulu and the island of Oahu. We work with partner agencies, all nonprofit partner agencies, over 200. We conduct workplace campaigns and other ways of soliciting funding for our partner agencies. That's our essential role, is to provide support to our partner agencies. But more than just as a funder and a fundraising organization, we're about creating impact. We're about creating change, about creating opportunity for people and improving the lives of all of us in this community. We do that in a lot of different ways. One of them is what I'm very happy to talk about today, is in the area of education.
Wow, okay. Now, my first question is, why don't, and this is a question which I already know the answer to.
Okay.
Why don't we just deal directly with these charities? Why don't we let these charities come and knock on our door all by themselves? Why do we need an interface like Aloha United Way?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. The first that comes to mind, and I think most important for many of our smaller partner agencies, is their capacity. They're not able to do so. Many of our partner agencies are a single person or a very small team operation. They don't have the ability to do direct campaign, direct donor relations kind of work. So we speak on behalf of smaller agencies in particular that are not able to do that. The other nice thing about Aloha United Way and involving this kind of third party is that we work with the community to help allocate funding in ways where there's the greatest impact. We're able to pool resources, both from the donor's perspective as well as from the agencies who we're fundraising on behalf of. We create teams of organizations that are working together on common problems.
So you're prioritizing.
Exactly.
And that prioritization is really important, because otherwise the public would just listen to the loudest bell, so to speak.
In a sense.
Not necessarily understanding what's really important.
It's sort of like an individual who has investments in a retirement account and they have a mutual funds manager. That manager has a big high-level perspective of the various investment options. And that's exactly the role that Aloha United Way serves for donors in a sense of charity and the support for our partner agencies.
It reminds me actually of ThinkTech. ThinkTech is operating here. We're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We know about education. That's what we do.
Right.
So we're a 501c3, and that means we have to operate. We have all the studio business. We have all the people who make movies, talk shows, put programs together for that purpose. At the same time, because we're a nonprofit, we have to go out and look for money. And it's like having two brains. You have to, while you're doing one, you have to be thinking of the other. It's really hard. And we're not the only ones like this. I don't want sympathy here. but I understand, how it is for the average smaller charity that is dedicated to some important purpose. If you tell them, well, on the one hand, you have to do your important purpose, but on the other hand, you also have to go look for money. You're giving them these disparate, activities and tasks. They would be more efficient, I would suggest. I know this would be so for us. If somebody would say, hey, here's some money for you. You don't have to go look for money and bang your head on the wall. It's not easy looking for money. Trust me on this one.
Well, it's similar at Aloha United Way. We realize that individual donors have an expectation. They want to know what the result of their contribution was. On my side, the work that I do in community impact is really important for donors to realize what that work is, because donors are more sophisticated now. They want to know what the outcome is.
Yeah, and that's another function that the operating company isn't necessarily good at, reporting back to the guy who provided the money. I mean, reports quarterly, monthly, what have you, annually, whatever it is. It's really appropriate and good, and it's a payback thing. It's a handshake thing with the original contributor to tell him where his money went, what happened.
Right.
Did it work? Did it not work? So those metrics are really critical, not only to ensure the next contribution, but to give resonance to the first contribution.
Sure. And also, if people understand what it is we're doing with the funds that we are responsible for, we're much more likely to be able to leverage that funding with other sources. For example, with grant revenue from government grants, for example.
Right.
We can pool resources and make a much bigger impact than individuals have the ability to do.
Okay, so this is definitely value added to the proposition, but how much does it cost in the proposition to have you there doing those functions?
Sure.
And acting as an intermediary that way?
Well, there's a couple different ways of looking at that. I think one of the critical aspects of understanding the cost is to understand the various types of revenue. So we have contributions from individuals, but we also have but revenue based on occupancy within our building. We also solicit grant dollars to help with things like IT infrastructure and building improvements and those sorts of things. So the revenues come from a lot of different
They come directly to
directions.
you so that you can perform your duties as the intermediary.
Right. So the cost now to the individual donor, for a donor that gives to Aloha United Way and wants a portion of that or all of it to go directly to one of our partner agencies, we're able to pass that through at 100%. There is no cost for that transaction.
Just a second. What he said is 100%. You don't get that every day.
Right.
That's really, really good.
One of the incredible benefits for those agencies that don't have the capacity to do fundraising on their own is that a contribution through Aloha United Way is at no fee. There's no administrative takeoff.
That's because you raise your own money.
We're able to raise
perform
funds
your
in other
services.
ways. Right.
That's an impressive model.
And sometimes people want to know what is the overhead rate.
Yeah.
There's different ways of calculating that. To be quite honest with you, our partner agencies, of which there are more than 200, have overhead rates anywhere from 5% to, in some cases, 30 or 40%, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're inefficient. The way their operation works has a
Depends on what they're doing.
It depends on what they're doing.
Some kinds of charitable operations are more efficient, some less.
True.
But I suppose one of your functions would be to evaluate that and say,
Yes.
well, if the guy's only doing 5%, only actually he's taking 95% for overhead, we're not going to give any money.
That
to
would be
company.
problematic.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. Of our 200 plus partner agencies, we vet those agencies every year. We allow the application it's an open process where new agencies can apply to be a partner. So we have a growing number of partner agencies from year to year. But even the existing agencies report financials to us, report performance outcomes to us. We know the salary of their CEO, we know their overhead, we know their cash balance. We do a really good job of assuring donors that a contribution to Aloha United Way is going to go to a well-run organization that's going to do right with that contribution. That's a value that Aloha United Way provides that donors may not. Some donors have the capability of doing that, but others may not.
Why do I feel inherent in that as a telephone call from you, maybe as the vice president for Impact, to one of your 200 clients, or whatever you call them, beneficiary companies?
Sure.
Saying, you know, we've looked at your documents and we've been looking at how you operate, and I'd like you to come over to our office for a little bit. We have some mentoring we'd like to provide. We'd like to show you how this could be done better.
Sure.
Does that happen?
We do it all the time, Jay. We are developing a capacity building series of training right now for our partner agencies. Financial management is a piece of that. Performance metrics and performance outcomes is another piece. Engagement with the board, engagement with the community, marketing opportunities. All of these things are value adds Aloha United Way provides to our partner agencies.
That's great. And it sort of works all in three directions. I mean, obviously it perpetuates you, but it also makes them better charities, and it helps the public. They can have a greater level of confidence about all of this.
Certainly.
So this is, it's an important thing, and it has to be done right. And it absolutely needs a vice president of community impact. So, how did you get to be vice president? What in your life led you to this moment?
My background is in social work. I'm a social worker by training.
Really? I never met a social worker right now.
That's a good thing. I worked for 2 of our partner agencies prior to my move to Aloha United Way. So I understand the relationship with Aloha United Way from a partner agency standpoint. I also have a background in business, so I think I have a good sense of nonprofit business management in general. I am lucky to have this position. I'm very fortunate to work for an organization like Aloha United Way. To be able to work directly with the community in so many different initiatives is something I'm very passionate about.
So what's your goal as Impact Vice President? What's your goal? I mean, what do you want to achieve when you wake up in the morning and sit there with the newspaper and coffee or whatever it is that starts your day? What do you want to achieve?
You know, some days I appreciate the individual stories. I like to learn about that keiki that was affected by a program that we support, or the kupuna who has secure, safe housing as a result of something we do. So the individual stories are really, really important, and that's what keeps me going. At the same time, Aloha United Way does a really nice job of looking at community level performance metrics.
A larger picture.
A much bigger picture. The individual stories are great, but what's the real impact? How is our community better as a result of the work that we're doing? That's what I look for.
What a perfect question. And we're going to leave our audience hanging, like cliffhanging on that question until we come back from this important promotional break. I didn't say commercial break, but promotional break. And we're going to find out exactly what happens. We'll be right back with Marc Gannon, Vice President of Community Impact for Aloha United Way, here on Aloha United We Stand.
Aloha, I'm Kili'i Akina, President of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week, we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. I told you we'd be back, and we're back with Marc Gannon, Vice President of Community Impact, Aloha United Way. Here on Aloha United We Stand, talking about education with impact. And impact is a word you used before, synonymous with the word change.
Yes.
I want to get that. That's really important. Why do you say that impact means change?
It depends on the context of the question, of course. Since this is about education, maybe I can give an example.
Okay.
Because we could talk for days about what that means. But I think an example illustrates things really nicely. In our education area, we're investing $1.5 million in grants to our partner agencies. They're working in a number of different areas, but all related to education. And I see education as very much a continuum. We have agencies who are, they're performing screenings for young keiki, 2 to 5-year-old kids. We're trying to find where kids have hearing delays, behavioral problems, different sorts of delays that may prevent them from being well prepared for kindergarten. And we have lots and lots of work in that area, and I would say our agencies that are working in that area are definitely among the leaders in the community as it relates to early childhood services. Then we have an initiative around 3rd grade reading. So kids learn how to read until they're about in 3rd grade. But after 3rd grade, kids read to learn. They have to be able to meet basic reading literacy
By the 3rd grade.
guidelines by around 3rd grade. So we have an initiative very targeted at that age group. Then there's a very difficult transition between high school and middle school. We have programs that assist kids that are struggling in that age group. So the impact is this continuum of services where there are provider agencies working directly with families, with kids, with the school system, et cetera, at all these different points within the system. And what we've seen in the recent, about the previous 5 years or so, is a steady increase in high school graduation rates across the state. I wouldn't say that that's directly a result or that Aloha United Way is the only contributing factor to that. There are many different parties involved in improving that, but that's a very clear success story. We have more kids graduating from high school on time now than we did 5 years ago.
So give me some of the factors that make that happen. I wasn't aware of that. Maybe it's a statement about the DOE even.
And they're certainly a huge player in that, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. There are so many different community stakeholders around education. Aloha United Way provides some forum for that
You're one of
working
many. You're one
together.
of many, and you can get in there. And they let you in because it's, DOE doesn't let everybody in, and you can actually have an effect on it. But that's quite remarkable.
Yeah,
that
we're about 82%, the last statistics that I saw, for kids in the state of Hawaii graduating from high school on time, which means in 4 years from the date that they enter high school. That is higher than the national average, and as I mentioned, it's been a steady increase over the past 5 years. It's a tremendous
really
success story.
Important to the state.
And the implications are huge. It's not just graduating from high school, it's those kids are working. Those kids are leaving education at the high school level, and many of them are seeking advanced degrees. Those high school graduates are less likely to experience poverty. They're less likely to be dependent on government subsidy programs. They're much more likely to have a healthy and successful life in career and for their families.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the elements I've been thinking about this lately of education in general is to make the student understand that he lives within a government, within a place, within a sovereignty that has government, and government has rules, and government has a relationship with him. And he can't be disaffected and ignore that. He can't walk away from that. Those are the rules of the game.
Sure.
And you know, it's kind of unfortunate, but since the 70s, we haven't had a draft. We haven't had an alternative to draft, like, you know, national service of any kind, really. And so kids go through school, and in many places, they never get the idea that they live within a government and that the government is theirs. They have a relationship with the government and so forth, and they need to follow the rules to keep the government going. I think on a national level, this is a big issue, and maybe troubled issue. But what I get in Hawaii is that if you are better educated, if the schools are better, if you have more kids graduating, you're going to have more people understand that basic principle. And then, as you say, we have a better society.
And I think another important point is, yes, living within the framework of government, but I would also say there are three primary sectors within our community, and I think, and they are the nonprofit sector. That's what Aloha United Way and our partner agencies represent. Of course, government, and then the for-profit corporate environment. I think
What
three.
about universities and academia?
You could say there's a fourth sector. The media may be a fifth. But those three sectors in particular work so closely together in order to make positive change. That is what Aloha United Way is about.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk a lot about our partner agencies, but that's not to exclude our corporate partners and our government partners. There are stakeholders in all three arenas that are critical to making this
You got
successful.
to touch it all.
That's right.
And that's one of the things in Hawaii where we have the ability to do that, but we always have to work on improving it. And it's a job that's never quite finished. And I want to go to one thought I had when you began, you know, saying that within impact there is change. I was thinking that the community is always changing.
Absolutely.
And so the amount of money and attention that Aloha United Way would provide to one problem, say it's poverty prevention, you know, you have three: education, poverty prevention, and safety net services.
Correct.
So, you know, you may wake up on a given January 1st and say, gee whiz, things have changed. There's more poverty or maybe less. We have to reallocate our attention, our money, reallocate the priorities among our clients, companies,
Sure.
Partners, and we can do that because we recognize that it's always changing and we always need to go with the change.
Right. And to add to that, you know, I don't think we'll ever lose a focus on poverty prevention. That the needs within those experiencing poverty change, but poverty prevention is core to what Aloha United Way is about, as is education. That's very unlikely to change. Education and poverty prevention are very strategic initiatives, and the impacts are very widespread. Within safety net services, those are things like assisting people who are homeless, assisting people who are victims of domestic violence, assisting people in crisis,
Yeah.
those that are really, really down on their luck. They don't know where else to turn. Those are crisis-related services, safety net services, and the needs of that population within our community changes more rapidly than the other two areas.
And any number of factors could create those changes.
Certainly, the economy as a big factor, definitely, unemployment, et cetera.
So take me through those three, and tell me, if you would, in a little more detail, exactly how you are creating solutions: education, poverty prevention, safety net services.
Okay. Well, collectively, we're investing $3.6 million in 2015 alone in these three areas. We work with partner agencies. In education, there may be a different number of agencies than in poverty prevention, et cetera, but collectively we have over 60 programs that we're funding. We're working collaboratively with them to establish performance metrics and shared performance metrics when it's possible. For example, multiple agencies working with a same demographic of clients may be able to report on the same metrics so that we have a much broader community level view of the outcomes.
So you always need to be studying that.
It's constantly refining metrics, looking at past performance, and adjusting targets for the future. It's a constant process, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so what about poverty prevention? How do you, I mean, education is
You got that.
education. Yeah. But poverty prevention, how do you prevent poverty?
There's a few areas. This is, you mentioned earlier about the changing needs. Based on research that we conducted in the community about 1 year ago, we learned that one of the highest priorities that the community feels Aloha United Way was not addressing was seniors. We added a very specific strategy around assisting seniors who are aging in place. We view that as very much a poverty prevention
It
initiative.
absolutely is. Yeah.
Because, for those older people who wish to live independently and forego, sometimes completely prevent institutionalization, that's what they want. It's not only the right thing to do, but it also is a poverty prevention strategy.
Sure. And it's really tragic what is happening. And I'm glad that you're involved in that, because I think that could, we have to be humanistic about this. We can't let, the elders fall down that slope after working all their lives,
Exactly.
on hard work, and then turning old and finding no support that will take care of them is tragic with a capital T.
Yeah.
So
I
we've
totally
got to
agree.
prevent that, because that is poverty. Yeah.
Right, and we heard that when the community spoke. That was a need that was felt we could do more in, and we created that strategy around that area. Additionally, within poverty prevention, there are efforts to help people develop skills for the workforce so that they can earn higher wages. There are efforts to assist people with job placements. So it's skill building, it's job placement. We also have financial literacy component. We have programs that teach young people, in particular, but not limited to young people, families as groups, about how to manage their personal finances. We have kids savings programs to help kids start a bank account. We have curriculums for classrooms to teach about credit and what that means, and the impact of not paying your bills on time, all those kinds of things.
These are, you would think that the population in general would know these things, but the truth is they don't. And it's to your credit that you find this out. You find out where the pukas are.
Exactly.
And you go and make their lives whole. Especially so when you have immigrants from Micronesia and other places where they haven't had this kind of life experience. I think we all, including the DOE, have to pitch in. I visited Kealakehe High School a few months ago and found that there were courses at Kealakehe High School, not for the kids, but for their parents.
Terrific.
How to go to the market, how to maintain, how to manage their finances. We all have to pitch in and make this happen, so it's very worthy. Marc Gannon, Vice President of Community Impact, Aloha United Way. Here on Aloha United we stand. We're talking about education with impact. We're discussing impact and how you have an impact. When I come back, when I ask them about the third category, safety net services, and in particular, how you deal with the homeless. It ain't easy. We'll be right back.
Students from kindergarten through 12th grade are learning to a higher standard. The Hawaii Common Core defines clear learning goals that empower students to think critically and apply their knowledge to real-world scenarios. Created with the input of Hawaii's educators, the Common Core prepares students for college, career, and community success, and puts our state closer to reaching our 55% goal.
Help us achieve Hawaii's education goal.
Find out how at 55by25.org.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance, Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com. or call 808-792-3919.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Marc Gannon, Vice President of Community Impact at Aloha United Way. Here on Aloha United, we stand. Standing with education, education with impact, okay? And we were talking before about the three areas into which Aloha United Way Fund,
United Way? Aloha
United Way, puts its money and resources. One is education, one is poverty prevention, really important for so many reasons, and safety net service. And the safety net services includes, as you mentioned, dealing with the homeless problem. This is a problem that is all around us, and it tears at us. And I worry that we become immune to it, that we put it out of our minds, cauterize ourselves about this because it is so prevalent on every island. How in the world do you deal with homelessness? It is so hard.
Jay, that's a loaded question. I wish we all knew the answer. I want to first say that homelessness is an issue that's very important to me personally because of my experience working with an agency that works directly with those who are homeless. I think there's a lot of compassion, particularly among service providers, and we need to create a system that there's I think a mixture of compassion and expectations and opportunities. Those are the three pieces that I think are really critical to this. Aloha United Way has worked in the area of homelessness for a long time. We've had a lot of experience, and we have two primary approaches to addressing homelessness. The first that I think is really critical, and perhaps many of those in the community aren't aware, we help to prevent homelessness. We help people that are struggling financially. We help people who lose their job. We help people that aren't able to make their rent payment or aren't able to pay their utilities. So preventing homelessness is one of the approaches to addressing homelessness.
Yes.
We've got to stop the people who are becoming homeless.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it really is. And many of us in our community are right there.
Yes.
We're right on the edge.
Yes, it's true.
And Aloha United Way recognizes that and assists those people before it becomes a crisis situation.
I remember the first time I actually met a homeless person. It was an executive who ran a company, and he'd had financial reverses, and he slept on a couch in his executive office because he had no home.
Wow.
And every night, when the staff left, they would say, "Oh, Mr. Smith, it's so wonderful how late he works."
Sure.
And every morning when they came back, they would see Mr. Smith, and they would say, "That's wonderful. He gets up so early so he can benefit the company." But in fact, he was homeless. It took him a long time to get out of that.
Yeah.
It can happen to anybody.
It can happen to anyone, and there are many, many contributing factors. And it's not about judging. It's not about placing fault on a person. It's about giving them choice and opportunity. And that's really where we work in the area of safety net services. And that's to assist individuals with housing, with medical care, with food, emergency food supply, and those sorts of things that are really, really critical to assisting those in greatest need. There's a huge initiative throughout the state, and in particular the city and county of Honolulu, around ending homelessness. There's an initiative that you may have heard, the Mayor's Challenge. We are one of 25 cities in which we are working to end veteran homelessness by the end of this year. That's really, really challenging.
On a number of levels.
But it's something that we've got to do.
Yeah.
We're also working collaboratively with many other partners throughout the community on ending chronic homelessness by the end of 2016.
What's chronic homelessness?
Chronic homelessness is individuals who have been homeless for multiple years or in and out of homelessness multiple times.
Or even
In other
generations?
Could be generations. It could be families of persons who have been homeless, and that's their way of life. The the thing that differentiates chronic homelessness from other types of homelessness is that a lot of people are homeless kind of episodically. They lost a job and they can't pay their rent, so they're evicted. But those individuals, under those circumstances, perhaps require a different intervention than a person who's been chronically homeless with severe mental health problems or disabilities that are continuous.
Yeah.
There's a different approach.
We had a woman named Christy McPherson. She's with a Catholic charities organization called Family Promise.
Yes.
And Family Promise is pretty successful.
Very much so.
But they're getting the low-hanging fruit because families are more likely to want to try to get out of homelessness than individuals who are really lost relative to the families. And I would say that that's a wonderful charity, but it's based on the idea that you look for the one you can help easiest, and then you help them.
Well, there's some reason to that, and I think other provider agencies take the approach that they want to solve those that have the most difficulty, because if we can solve those who are most difficult to house and keep them housed successfully, then we'll create a system in which we can serve others. There's different approaches, and I think what's really important, Jay, is to understand that it has to happen within a network. It has to be a systems approach. And that's where Aloha United Way is very valuable, because we can pull parties together to create solutions that are throughout the community, as opposed to dealing with one segment of the population.
Yeah. And I think the community in general has to get behind it. I learned about something called River of Life Mission a few years ago, also on the show, which took care of all kinds of people down on Hotel Street. And it was a wonderful organization. I don't know where they went, though, because the space they occupied is now taken by some commercial operations. They're not there. But what I learned from them is that they were supported by a lot of churches. And the churches wanted them to interface with the homeless, because the churches would prefer not to do that themselves, because their parishioners, wouldn't necessarily want to do that. And so it's a question of raising the kind of sympathy in the community where everybody is involved. It's not just writing a check. It's actively supporting. And then the last part of my little interference here will be, not too long ago on Hawaii Public Radio, I heard a very interesting story about a family in Germany.
Okay.
And there's apparently a program in Germany. So this, Muslim immigrant, no job. They felt real bad for him and people like him. And so they have a program where people take these homeless people into their homes and take care of them, feed them, clothe them, whatever it is. And I think they may get paid some stipend, sort of like what do you call it, a foster care.
Sure.
Where the government or the charity steps in and helps them do that. But that is really a tremendous statement of morality and caring, to take someone who's really down in his luck into your home. Do you think there's a future for that here?
Well, I think the point that you make that is resonating most with me is that all people need to be involved. This is a community issue that affects all of us, whether it's because we see it ourselves. It's a very visible problem. Homelessness is something that's very much in your face all the time. Whether it's affecting your business or affecting your own commute to work, et cetera, we're all touched by this issue. And it does require a community approach. Not only service providers and nonprofit organizations, but government has a very key role in this. I believe that the visitor industry has a very key role in this, and other corporations, and those of us who want to solve the problem are looking for cooperation and buy-in from a much larger base within the community. I don't know about the specifics of housing individuals in one's own home, but there has been some work on...
That's not easy. It's hard to find people who will do that.
Yeah. Well, there's been some work around modifying housing regulations, allowing for more units. That's one of the problems, is just the availability of housing.
Yeah, right. Big problem in Hawaii because, obviously the cost of land, is a limited amount of it, and the cost always goes higher than you want.
Sure.
So I'd like to talk for our final, area of discussion, Mark, about, the dynamic, the future. You mentioned earlier that education was doing pretty well and that a greater number of kids were graduating from high school. This is really important. But what about, all of the composite things that you do in education, poverty prevention, safety net services? Are we as a society, statewide, doing better or worse than we were, say, 2 or 3 years ago? Are we getting to a better place? Is the struggle easier or more difficult in the way our society is evolving?
I think we're making some very real progress in key areas. High school graduation is one. The other thing I would like your viewers to understand a little bit more is the work that we're doing around preparing kids for kindergarten. Many kids, especially those among affluent communities, have great resources at home when they're growing up. They go to a doctor regularly, they may attend preschool or go to some sort of day programming where kids interact with other kids and learn how to be prepared to enter kindergarten and be successful. We've started a program in 2 very specific geographic locations based on the need, which we're actively working on expanding, and that is to screen kids for developmental delays so that we can identify problems earlier, provide treatment, and in many cases, completely resolve the delay before kindergarten. One of the long-term impacts is more appropriately placing children in regular DOE education as opposed to special education. For kids that need special education, that's very valuable and an appropriate placement. But for some kids that we can divert out of special education by, for example, fixing the problem with their vision or fixing the problem with their hearing, they are more likely to succeed in early education and all the way through high school. Not to mention the cost savings for the community is huge. The difference between a child in the cost of a child in Department of Education regular ed versus special ed, the difference is nearly $19,000 per year per child.
Yeah.
So it's a smart way to address problems early as opposed to waiting until problems become much more severe and harder to treat. And that's not only the case with education. I believe that strongly about the other areas in which we work as well.
Well, that leads me to another question, maybe my last question of this discussion anyway, is we talk about change, we talk about impact on change, and it strikes me that some of the things, at least some of them that you've been talking about, these services, were at one point in time covered by government. But now government doesn't have a lot of money. It's all over the country, I think, for infrastructure or social infrastructure. Government does less than more to handle these things. And I remember George W. Bush's inaugural address. He wanted a faith-based approach to this. He wanted to see the charitable side of the equation be more active, the faith side be more active in terms of dealing with problems that the government might have otherwise handled. And so what's happening, at least arguably, I raise this as a suggestion, not a fact, but what seems to me to be happening is that government is letting go of certain functions, activities, such as some of the things you've been doing in education, and leaving it to organizations like Aloha United Way to find a way to raise the money, perform those services. Are we having, this is my final question, are we having some kind of really profound sea change along these lines? Is the function of government being changed? Is the function of charitable organizations being changed? Is one taking more of the burden? Is charitable organizations now, like you, taking more of the burden from off of government hands because government simply can't or won't do it?
Well, it's a complicated question, Jay.
Sorry. And you have
I
1 minute
appreciate
to
that.
answer it.
Very good. Well, the point I'd like to make is that it's absolutely critical for both government and nonprofit organizations to work collectively, cooperatively. Both have very essential roles. The shifting of responsibility may happen back and forth over time as our administration changes, as the complexities of the community changes. But I think the way to address problems is to have multi-pronged solutions and involvement from more stakeholders.
Everybody participates.
Everyone's got to participate.
Everybody plays. It's really important. It means the whole community plays. Marc Gannon, Vice President of Community Impact at Aloha United Way. We're talking about education with impact and other things about poverty prevention and safety net services here on Aloha United We Stand. It's been great, Marc.
Thank you.
We'll do more.
It's a pleasure.
We'll see
Appreciate
your
time.
partners one by one.
Very good.